This axe is beating all odds. It should be broken in 2 pieces right now. Let's pull this head off and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This thing's got to be 100 years old. So I said that this axe has beaten the odds and it should be broken. And that's by today's standards and what you'll read in the forums and what we hear about. But I've got this book right here. And if you don't have the Axe book by Dudley Cook, strongly recommend getting this. And I'm going to point to something in here, multiple things in here about this axe handle. But first off, the first thing that people look at when they get an axe handle is the grain orientation. I couldn't find a more perpendicular grain orientation on a handle if I tried. Check this out. Okay, it's completely straight across. I'll sand it real quick so we can see. Well, I'm not sure if that helped. We'll zoom in. Okay, the grain orientation is completely perpendicular, and everything we hear is that you don't want that, okay? So that's one issue. Well, let's look at what Dudley Cook has to say here, okay? In his chapter about making handles, nowhere in his book does he say that you want parallel grain orientation. And as a matter of fact, his diagram right here talks about cutting quarter sawn lumber. Now, there's multiple things in this book that I agree with, and there's multiple things that I think were just his theories. So I'm going to throw that out to the side. But why don't you want perpendicular grain orientation? Well, one of the things, so this brings me to my next example, is let's look at the bigger issue, and that's grain runout. Okay? So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? It just keeps going down. Massive grain runout. Now, if this was a straight handle, you wouldn't have that runout. So that brings me to number 3, curved handles. And this is a pretty curvy handle. This isn't quite a French curve. It lacks that more abrupt angle right here on the grip, but it's definitely a neck forward pattern, and it's got some curves. Curved handles are weaker. And the reason why is 1, curved handles have more grain runout, and 2, which this is, kind of my theory, correct me if I'm wrong, but not only do you have grain runout, which is the separation in annual growth rings here, but you have, I would say, fiber runout also. So you've got bad grain orientation, horrible grain orientation. You've got a curved handle. You've got grain run out. What else do you have? Let me get the scale. Nice. 4 pounds, 5 ounces. Okay. Heavier axe heads obviously put a lot more force or a lot more pressure right here at the shoulder, right? This is where we see a lot of breaks happening. So we've got this heavy old head. So you got a big 4 1/4 pound head. That's a pretty good size head. on a 36-inch handle, okay? So the longer the handle, the more force that you can create, the bigger the swing, and that'll put more pressure, again, right here on the eye. And God forbid you overstrike with all that force of a big old head on a big old long handle, and you break your handle. Oh, one more thing. This is not a thick handle. That's 21 millimeters. Okay, guys? That's about 8/10. That's considerably thinner than any store-bought handle that you're going to find, and that is about what we're seeing on, you know, more the boutique handles that we're looking at. That's not super thick. It's actually pretty thin. So I have come across hundreds, 300, 400, 500 Axe handles in the past couple years, okay? And most of them are broken or they have some sort of damage to them. And I've come across quite a few sledgehammer handles that have perpendicular grain orientation similar to this. And that's one of the things, sledgehammers, you don't hear any demo guys or any carpenters or anybody talking about a sledgehammer needs to have horizontal grain orientation, okay? And something to take into consideration with that is a sledgehammer handle has minimal to no run out, and it doesn't matter where the grain is oriented. So run out is the biggest issue, right? And this handle just goes to show that even with run out, a good piece of hickory will last, okay? Now, the next handle that came off the lathe looks just like this. It may have snapped on the first swing, but we don't know that. So all I'm getting at here is that if you're looking for a user handle and you don't get perfect grain orientation, it's not the end of the world, guys. Okay, we know that the Forest Service and other axe companies have come out and said that it's not that it's a myth, but when we get into shorter handles, I think it's 24 or 26 inches, it's not as, it doesn't have an effect, grain orientation. The grain run out, that's where you have the issue, and that's where these curvy handles, that's what makes them weaker, and that fiber run out, okay? But we can see that handle has just been, I mean, I think that it was used recently. I picked this up at a garage sale, and I think the old timer, I think he had been using this handle, and it's gotta be old. Look at that. So when we see this, this line right here, okay, that's a good indication that it's, you know, I would say pre-70s. And this was a fawn's foot handle, okay? That came out to that point, and that line ran out. And that was a traditional way to hang a fawn's foot, was that you lop that fawn's foot off instead of just hammering on it and smashing it. But I thought you guys might like to see that, the handle that beat all the odds. Now, I think what I'm gonna do with this thing is I'm gonna pull a template off of it, and I'm gonna make a new handle for this big old fat head. And the reason why, I've been swinging 30-inch, really cut down about 29-inch handle for my underhand chop that I've been focusing on. And I know a lot of guys are pushing that 30-inch, 32 about max, but there is a big log challenge. So if you guys are familiar with the cordwood challenge that Skill Cult started years ago, they've added different challenges to it. And one of the things is a big log challenge. And I'm gonna push for, I don't know, I think it's 20 inches minimum diameter that has to be. And I'm gonna go look for, because I'm gonna cut into pine or cedar, I'm gonna, you know, 24, 26, maybe who knows, 30 inches. West Coast trees, right? You need a longer handle to get down to the bottom of that. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with this. I'm not quite sure, but definitely pulling a template. I'm tempted to rehang this handle actually and oil it up and actually go use it, because I wouldn't be surprised if you could get another 2 or 3 cords out of this thing. So that's it, guys. I'm just saying, don't overlook imperfect grain orientation. This is proof right here. Have a good day.